The president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
When we do have secret prisons, that is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
The president wants to spy on... Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. While normally I deal with national issues, it is important this election day to remember that local issues sometimes affect your life even more than national issues. In the city of Alexandria, where I live, there is an election this November. At the exact same time, you elect the President of the United States and the Senate race in Virginia as well. It is Tuesday, November 6th, and it affects, well, every single seat in the City Council of Alexandria will be up for election. So, again, I talk a lot about President Obama. I talk a lot about the Senate race, Virginia, Tim Kaine running. Today I want to talk about Alexandria, my hometown, and to do so with some dedicated public servants and some people who want to sit on the public council. So let me introduce all four guests I'm going to have today. Sitting, we have, here's the big shot. So sitting right here, sitting down at the table, is Del Pepper. She has been on the council for a long time, done a lot of work for the city of Alexandria. Tim Lovain, who is a former member of the city council. We have John Taylor Chapman, who is running for the first time, and Allison Silberberg, who is also running for the first time. I'm going to focus on John Taylor Chapman and Allison Silberberg in the second half of the broadcast, so don't worry, you will get a full chance to see them. For now, I want to talk to Del and Tim. So thank you for coming out. And right now I want to show a map of the city of Alexandria. Because if you look at the map of the city of Alexandria, you can see on the eastern side near the Potomac River is perhaps the most famous portion, the one that a lot of tourists come to visit. That's Old Town. But the city of Alexandria is bigger than that, and it goes all the way west, almost to where 395 hits the Beltway, and that's called the West End. And you find, as you see on my map, Landmark. There's a mall down there. So it's a big city. It's a not just a suburb of Washington, D.C., and the two people I'm sitting next with have been serving Alexandria a long time. Del, you've been on the council for a number of years, and you've given a lot of good service. One of the things that happened just last week is very interesting. There's a coal plant, a coal burning plant. We used to call it the Morant plant, but I think they changed their name to GenOn and a bunch of other things. And it's actually pretty close to where I live, and it seemed to always be spewing pollution into the air. You played a role in shutting down that plant. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I monitored with Paul Smedberg. The two of us were in charge of monitoring the functioning and closing of the facility. It was, for those who don't know, it's in the northeast portion of our city. It's a coal burning plant with some 50, 60 years of service. So it was really a polluter.
There's a huge mound of coal still today.
Oh,
it's
you
out there.
bet there is.
I don't know, 4, 5, 6 stories high, it seems.
And I have to tell you, I won't believe that it's really closed until that coal pile goes.
Tell me how you shut down a plant that's been around for 50 years. What specifically did you do? How did you accomplish that?
Well, first of all, it wasn't very easy. It began with a slew of anecdotal accounts that we were hearing from neighbors. They were complaining about every time they went to their balconies, there was this film of
soot, really. Yeah.
All over their balconies, all their chairs, their cars, and it would even clog their air conditioning filters, and they were getting tired of it. But it was all anecdotal, and there was no way to actually use a lot of that information. You don't take on something like Merit, which is now GenOn. You don't take them on unless you've got real proof, and you better have 10 weeks to Sunday to prove it.
Coal burning plant has been around, I think, since the 1960s or even the 1950s.
Earlier, even. It's really been around, and it was, as a matter of fact, the single worst site for polluting within the Beltway.
Wow.
So
how do you shut down a plant like that? So people are complaining.
One of the things,
were you on the council at the time?
Yes, and one of the things that we did was we kind of kept an eye on that. But we had to have the scientific proof, and that's where the community came in. We have an incredibly involved community, and it was people like Chimento, Elizabeth Chimento and Paul Hertel, who put down, they actually hired somebody to help them work and put together a piece that showed they analyzed all the impacts, and they had scientific facts and proof. And the city then did our own analysis, and we did everything we could. About the year 2004 or so, one of the things we did was we passed a resolution that said we are going to close this plant down. We may take long-term and short-term measures, and we tried everything.
You had to go to what, federal authorities, state authorities?
We did. We went to the courts. We tried rezoning. We tried closing them down by working with the state legislature. We tried working with the Office of Air Pollution Control, and we tried the whole works. And we were kind of able to keep them at bay. And at one time, in August of 2008, one of the things we did do was get them closed down. They had a slew of
lawyers, I'm sure,
violations.
Violations.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And no sooner did we close them down than the Department of Energy came along and opened them up.
Under Bush.
Under Bush, of course.
Of course.
Anyway, what happened then was we still had to work with them, but they operated under an EPA administrative special kind of
But get
arrangement.
to the chase. You actually, this week, I mean just last week, October 1st, they are shut down.
Well, they need an operating permit. And what happened was that we kept finding objections to how much of a violator they were of their present operating permit. So they were always in some kind of hot water. They couldn't move ahead, but we couldn't either. We couldn't close them down. So finally, we reached an agreement. To make a long story short, that they came to us actually and said, we will clean it up. We will put $34 million in escrow, and we will clean it up. And that we actually took them up on it. A lot of people said, why are you doing that? If you really want to close them down, why are you making it possible for them to stay open a longer time? But we had to give the neighbors
called their bluff.
relief.
You called their bluff.
Well,
because they were bluffing. They actually, at the end of the day, they're not doing it.
They aren't doing it, but they came to realize that there may be some new standards coming along, and they might not, even with the improvements, be able to really meet some of the newer standards.
So what's the future of that site? What's it going to be?
Well, that's a good question, and I think that's what everybody is interested in, is what happens next. We one of the first things we did when we heard that they were in fact going to close was to find out, what's the soil like? Because that's one of the first things.
It's never been tested.
No, you're right. It really hasn't. We don't even know how deep it goes, as a matter of fact, because we know there's got to be
underneath the coal
pollution.
pile.
Right. And once they move that, they're actually in the process of lowering it and moving it out, and it'll go by train and out and away. But the thing is that we know that there are some kind of tanks underneath that pile. We don't know what all is there or what to expect. But they are at least Genon believes that it's going to take them like a year, 18 months to kind of clean things up and totally deactivate the whole works.
Let me turn to Tim just on this, because I haven't had a chance to
Yeah.
ask him this. So I take it you also supported the closing down
Oh, yes,
of the
very
plant.
much so. Yeah, when I was
and
on
you
the
also
council.
worked to do that.
Very helped to do that. But I'll tell you, the cleanup, it could be really extraordinary, the costs of this cleanup. Because
But they're paying for it. They're not the city.
No.
We're not doing it.
Well, they aren't obligated to pay either. Actually, GenOn is obligated to pay at the end of its lease, which ends in 88 years.
For those who don't know, GenOn is Morant. It's the same thing. It's just a change of name.
Right.
Well, I always, my neighbors, we all call it the Morant plant still. So a lot of people don't know what GenOn is.
But there's no obligation. You know, what we're going to have to do, maybe go to the Superfund, but the depth of the pollution could be really extraordinary.
So they are not obligated under the law to clean it up.
No, maybe.
But if they want to use the site, if they want to turn it over to someone else,
then you've got problems. And it's such an important site. I mean, think about this. This is right on our waterfront in historic Alexandria.
It's on a beautiful point. I mean,
it's a great location.
By the way, for those who don't know, let's just show the map. I'm going to show about where the plant is. It's about right here. So it's right here. There's
all of Fairfax, all the way up north. Royal and Fairfax, right on.
It's about right here.
Almost to the.
We can make the map a little bit bigger, and I can show it a little bit closer. So it's in the northern end of Old Town, and can't really get it. Oops, good old Google. Anyway, it's about right here. And as you can see, there's this beautiful marina right here, which I've been to many times. So it's a sailing marina, and it's wonderful. And then there's Old Town right here, and it's right in between. So it really has a crucial spot on the waterfront. And I assume that if
it's cleaned up, it could be a wonderful location.
The council's going to work together to try to make this.
Let me tell you what. What right now we're mainly what's in the master plan is mainly just to have access to the waterfront if there is a time when we're actually going to be when GenOn would be moving on. We didn't realize it was going to come quite so soon, but that's good. Anyway, what I was going to say is we're going to have a lot of input from the community as to what they would like to see there, and what we are hoping for, at least let me speak for myself, what I'm hoping for is that it'll be some kind of a mixed-use development.
What does that mean? I mean, a lot of people don't know.
Well, it always means just some commercial office. We'd like to have some residential there. We'd like to have good access, as I pointed out, from the waterfront right to the rest of the city. We want to communicate with that. We certainly we've already got a path, a bicycle and pedestrian path that goes through there. So we're looking for that kind of thing. But it's going to have a lot of community input, you can be sure, and it'll be interesting to see what the community wants. But one of the things we can't forget is the fact that as you pointed out, it does have GenOn does have a 88-year lease, but Pepco owns the land. Pepco still has their station there, that electrical substation there. And the problem is that they don't have any immediate plans to move, but that is a hideous site. I would love to see that undergrounded if that's possible.
Okay, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to start with Tim Lovain. And your focus has always been on transportation. You're like Mr. Transportation guy. So I want to talk to you about transportation in the city of Alexandria. If you want to call in, join the discussion, do so. 888-488-MARK.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And in the next few years, she faces 2 major surgeries to strengthen her fragile bones. She's only 10 years old. Most people don't worry about fragile bones until late in life. For those with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones are a concern throughout their lifetime. Find out how you can strengthen this child's future.
Diabetes is a killer. After I was diagnosed, I didn't feel sick, so I didn't listen to my doctor. Then it struck. I had a heart attack, then a stroke, and I was only 49.
Most people with diabetes also have high blood pressure and cholesterol, which can cause severe heart damage. In fact, 2 out of 3 people with diabetes die from heart disease or stroke.
Don't let diabetes destroy your life.
Call for your free diabetes survival guide. Choose to live.
Inside Scoop, Virginia.
Everybody is following the presidential election, of course, coming up on Tuesday, November 6th, and most of you have made your decision, the senatorial race. I hope that you will go out and support Tim Kaine. But if you live in the city of Alexandria, there is a local election. Now, local elections in the city of Alexandria usually aren't at the same time as the presidential election, but this year it is. In fact, it's on the back of the ballot. That's kind of tricky. Remember, when you go to vote, don't just vote the front side of the ballot, flip it over. Those local races often have a major impact on your life, sometimes even more than the federal races do. Sitting next to me is Tim Lovain and Del Pepper. Del has been on the city council for many years. Tim Lovain is a former member of the city council. Tim, when people talk about you and what your vision is for the city, you have many visions. You have this long policy paper on your website. It's many pages long. And this is small print. But the area it seems that you are most known for and most focused on is transportation. So let me ask you about that. I take the Dash bus. I certainly use that. Where do you see Alexandria's transportation 10 years from now? What would you like to see?
Well, like you said, I'm very interested in transportation. I do that for a living at my work, representing public transportation clients. I chair 3 coalitions. And I was very pleased when I served on council that we passed a transportation master plan for Alexandria. And the focus of that was 3 high-capacity transit corridors. We call them A, B, and C. A in the eastern part of the city, B around the Duke Street corridor, C in the western part of the city. And those high-capacity transit corridors really are the future for Alexandria.
What does that mean? What's a transit corridor? What is that?
It just means that this would be an area hopefully with dedicated right-of-way, with high-capacity transit, like either like a bus rapid transit or a streetcar, operating in that dedicated right-of-way, getting people where they need to go.
Dedicated right-of-way. That means that basically there's a street or an area or a railway where cars don't go, or private cars. It's for a streetcar or, I mean, because we have the trolley on King Street in Old Town, but that's going where the other cars go.
Yeah. Now, in some corridors, it's not possible to do dedicated right-of-way, and then you can have mixing in with traffic. And streetcars, which I'm a big fan of, they work well just mixing in with traffic. But, it's always better if you can find the dedicated right-of-way to do that. We're having a difference of opinion in the region here, where Arlington and Fairfax County are constructing a streetcar line that will extend from the Alexandria city limits in the Potomac Yard in a large U down to the Alexandria city limits by Skyline. And Alexandria has instead decided they would like to start with bus rapid transit. So we're having a difference of opinion. I prefer the streetcar, and I think not in every corridor, but I think definitely we should try to extend that streetcar into Alexandria at both ends.
What's the benefit?
One benefit is that you get higher ridership. It's a cool ride. A lot of people will get on a train who won't get on a bus. The second is that because of the permanence of that rail line, developers can count on it, and it can induce transit-oriented development. Because a lot of this is all about smart growth, how you can drive smart growth. And with streetcars, light rail, you lay that rail, and the developers can count on it. It induces transit-oriented development, which can help to pay for it.
So it's sort of the way that people tend to build condos and houses and restaurants near metro lines.
Right.
Only we have no connection from, say, Braddock Road, King Street, Huntington, from the yellow line to the blue line, Franconia, Springfield. This would be a connection between them?
The corridor in the east part of the city goes down Crystal City and then down Potomac Yard, down to the Braddock Road Metro.
Right.
But it sort of tracks that. Now we have plans for a new metro station at Potomac Yard, which is great.
And that's going to happen?
Well, I think so.
Yes, we wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Del, when's it going to open? Can you give me a prediction?
I don't know, but it's
2 years, 3 years?
No, it takes a while longer than that. But we're working on it, and that's what counts. Because for years, I have believed that if we only had a sufficient density around that area, it would be something everybody demanded.
Well, there's a lot of density. There's new buildings. If you drive down Route 1,
yes, but that's now. We're getting that density that will support Potomac Yards, or metro station there. It's just got to be the best thing that'll really keep that area growing and developing and being economically sustainable. So it's a plus.
Yep. And we just have to look for more attractive transit options, and that's why I think streetcars have a lot of appeal. But bus rapid transit can be appealing to a lot of people. Circulator buses is another thing, and that might be the solution in Old Town. Yeah. Small, clean, frequent buses getting people to Metro.
Now, one of the things the city council does is basically you do zoning. You try to figure out where something should grow, how you help economic development, at the same time, where residents should live. I know you live in the west end of the city, Dal, and it's a lot of people focused on Old Town, but not so much on the west end, where the Landmark Mall area is. Now, there have been some complaints that area is maybe not as good as it should be. Well, what's your view about Landmark Mall?
Well, I have always felt that when it became developed as a full performing mall, it would spur a lot of development all up and down Van Doren, and it would connect. We were hoping that we would have a BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, that would be connecting there right at Landmark Mall from Van Doren to Landmark Mall and then going straight on up Beauregard. So we figured that this was really going to be a winning situation. We were hoping for a transit hub right there at Landmark Mall, which would connect the Corridor B that he was talking about and Corridor C. So we really are hoping that that's going to be a reality and soon, because that could be a real helpful thing for us in the West End. But Landmark Mall for some time has had a change of ownership and different companies merging that are controlling it. And it's been kind of a hard thing for us to get a good thing going here. We are, in 2004, GGP, General Growth Properties, came along and they gave this terrific conceptual plan, and we thought it was terrific. And we set about putting together a master plan that would put in the zoning and everything else we needed. And now, that has they went bankrupt, and now we have the Howard Hughes Corporation. And we are working with them to come up with some kind of plan. What we're looking for is a kind of an urban mixed-use area. If you want to place your density somewhere, that's a good place to place it, and because it's 52 acres. Same as with Potomac Yard.
Let me ask you both this. You both, of course, are Democrats. The other people I'm going to have on the show in a minute, Allison Silberberg and John Taylor Chapman, are Democrats, and also Justin Wilson and Paul Smedberg, who both, Paul currently sits on the council, Justin has before, are all Democrats. There are a couple Republicans on the council as well. Where do you see as the major differences between Democrats and Republicans at the Alexandria city level? Why should people vote a Democratic ticket? Let me start with you, Tim.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say is that the pattern with the current Republicans on council is that they don't really seem to want to participate in the development of policies. What you should be doing is offering alternatives and ideas and negotiating with the other colleagues and bringing up concerns and working things out. Instead, they sort of hold back and then at the very end cast a vote. Or in the case of Miss Hughes, sometimes not even casting a vote. She'll just abstain or try to switch her vote. So
I think with the waterfront plan, for example.
The waterfront plan was very contested,
but not coming forth with some ideas of their own.
So Democrats get their hands
against it, but she didn't propose something.
Right.
And they just don't offer alternatives on the budget, on the major development ideas. They just are passive players. So for the Democrats are all workers. We all roll up our sleeves and listen to the people and try to work things out.
Did you want to say something about that?
I was about to say, you're absolutely right there. I think that it's not that they don't value the same things, but we're willing to fight for some of those social values that we really do care about.
How are they on the Morant plant? Did the Republicans support the plant? Or they're against it? I don't remember their views on that one.
Well, that's why. But anyway, you prove our point.
Okay.
There was never any opposition. You can't have that kind of a problem, and I'm sure that even though it was not something that they really were involved with, they were not against it. They weren't for the Morant plan.
I'll give you one other thing that's kind of interesting, is they, both of them currently on council have on several occasions voted to reject federal funds that were being awarded to the city.
Why would anyone reject federal funds? That doesn't make
you have
any
to
sense.
ask them. It's
they were against federal funds to help the city of Alexandria.
Like the city would apply in a grant program, and the federal government would say, yours is a excellent application, and we've awarded you $1 million, and they would vote to reject the money.
Wow.
Kind of like what these governors do.
Yeah, I can't imagine why
governors
anyone would do that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. There's a new superintendent, Dr. Sherman. Do you have confidence in him? Do you like him?
Well, I have 3 daughters in the public schools, so the leadership of the school system is very important to me. I think he's done some really good things. He's also been somewhat controversial, but my experience has been that the heart of the system and the best thing that we have got going are our teachers. My daughters have had some extraordinary teachers, and as long as I just would want to keep the administration to empower those teachers and then let them innovate and collaborate and do their thing.
Do you have a comment on the schools, or Dr. Sherman?
Just this. I think that the school board has really tried, and the superintendent, to bring forth a slew of programs to meet practically every possible concern. I don't know how robust those programs are, but at least they're there and they're in place and they're really trying. For example, at Landmark Mall, just during this month, they have opened up a school there that is kind of like a 24/7 school, because some of it you can do on the computer. And you can get, the idea is to help the students to be sure that they are graduating with a diploma, and that's really important.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one more thing about the schools.
Yeah.
I really think that I've always felt that you have to keep those small classrooms. That's the only way a teacher knows whether or not each child has learned that lesson. But the other thing is we've got to increase our school capacity. There's no other way to solve it. We've got to, and we've got to have more preschool classrooms.
We only have about a minute left, and I know it's a complicated issue, but someone asked you to keep your answers short. Just about the budget in general. Do you feel confident that Alexandria has the money it needs for the future? Might you have to raise taxes in the future? How do you feel, Tim, about the budget?
Well, I was real proud the 3 years I was on council that the average residential tax bill remained flat. So I'm a budget hawk on trying to keep the costs under control. I think that we should be able to meet the needs of the city if the economy continues to recover, albeit slowly, without any large tax increases.
Exactly. I think you've hit the nail right on the head there, and I do agree with that. We are very careful when we go into any large expenditure, like, for example, if we are putting money or taking bonds for the Potomac Yard metro station. We talk to the bonding agencies to make sure that we're not going to lose our AAA bond rating from either Moody's, Million Poor's.
So the city has the highest bond rating.
Yeah, we do. The best you can do. We're really terrific, and we're not going to lose that, because when you do go to the bond, if we lose their rating and we go to the bond market, it costs us much more.
Well, let me thank you both for coming here. I am a resident of the city of Alexandria, and I must say I love Alexandria, and I love the job both of you have done, and I wish you both luck in the current elections. Tuesday, November 6th, you will see Del Pepper and Tim Lovain on the ballot, and you've heard from them both tonight. Coming up, we're going to hear from 2 other candidates for City Council, Allison Silberberg and John Taylor Chapman. If you want to call in, 888-488-MARK.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped-off money. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
Here again, the Inside Scoop, Virginia.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine, focusing today on Virginia issues, specifically on the city of Alexandria. That's my hometown, and I'm a big fan of the city of Alexandria. If you've never been to Alexandria, Virginia, a lot of people, they go to Washington, D.C., and they don't check out this old colonial town on the shores of the Potomac. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. There's a lot of history there. But I don't have time to talk about how much I love Alexandria because I've got two people sitting next to me who arguably love it even more. They are John Taylor Chapman and Allison Silberberg. They are both first-time candidates for the city council. They both won their primaries and they're running on the Democratic team along with Del Pepper and Tim Lovain, who you just met, and Justin Wilson and Paul Smedberg. Both of them are out of town or they would have been here tonight. John Taylor Chapman, I want to start with you because you seem to be most known for, or most famous for being a housing advocate, someone who has looked out for people who are struggling in the city. And in fact, I believe you were born yourself in public housing. Is that correct?
That is.
It says you're a fourth generation Alexandrian. Wow. Your great-grandparents, you have a great-grandparent born in Alexandria. So tell me about your life growing up in Alexandria and how you can make life better for other people who are growing up in public housing in Alexandria today.
Okay. Well, I did start out in public housing until about maybe the 10th grade. My family lived in the housing projects right next to Charles Houston, right off of Route 1. And then when the city redeveloped Quaker Hill and made that a public housing community, we were one of the first families to move out there. And that was, for me, that was roughly around 3rd grade. And so we were there for about 7 years, and then my mom saved up enough money to move out to the city and buy a house. And then she bought that house.
Our mayor is also born in public housing, I believe, Mayor Hill.
Yep, he was as well. So our family's moved, from public housing to self-sufficiency and been able to buy a home.
So in Alexandria, if you go all around, you see a lot of changes. A lot of places that were public housing are going away, and there's new condos and so forth taking their place. What are they doing with the residents there?
They have an interesting program or way they go about working with the residents. They try to bring back at least, I've seen numbers around 40% of the residents. They try to provide one-for-one replacement, that's what they call it in the city, for all the residents so that they still have a place to live within the city. ARHA, which is our Alexandria Redevelopment and Housing Association, has been able to purchase different properties throughout the city, and when they redevelop a certain part or portion of public housing, they'll move residents to different parts of the city.
What do you see, assuming you're elected in November, as your priorities in terms of housing in Alexandria? What would you like to see happen in Alexandria 5-10 years from now in terms of housing?
I think one of the biggest things that I really want to see with housing is the city be more aggressive in bringing in nonprofit developers that work with affordable housing, work to maintain affordable housing and build affordable housing. I don't know if our city's been aggressive enough in pushing nonprofit developers to come in and focus on building affordable housing units. And I think that's really where we can stretch our dollars and our resources when it comes to affordable housing. Because as you well know, federal funding with housing is really going away. So the real only resource we have left is to really work with nonprofits and partner and see how we can stretch those remaining
things like
dollars.
Habitats for Humanity, things like that would be an example of a nonprofit. Now, Allison, you were chair of Alexandria's Economic Opportunities Commission.
I am.
You're still currently the chair. Excuse me. You're still the chair. Okay, you're still the chair. Now, the Economic Opportunities Commission also deals with housing issues.
That's right. It's one of our top priorities.
Okay, so do you agree with John on this? Where would you like to see your priorities in terms of housing?
We actually really do concur on this. In fact, we've talked about it during the primary and now during the general election. We've talked a lot about this. This is one of my biggest priorities. I think it should be a top priority for the city, affordable housing and workforce housing. The city's...
What is workforce housing?
Well, that's housing for those who are part of the city staff, or firefighters, police officers, teachers, people who are
serving the city.
Serving the city are doing okay, they're doing fine, but the median prime income in the city of Alexandria currently is over $550,000.
So what can
that's
a member of the
last
city council
December.
do to make housing more affordable in the city?
Well, as John mentioned, and I totally agree with this, we need to have public-private partnerships with existing nonprofit entities. I would include in that the Enterprise Foundation and MANA, which is based in DC. There was an article today in the Washington Post in the Metro section about what MANA is doing. And I've been in touch with MANA. It goes back actually about 10 or 15 years. But there's the city, it's my understanding from city staff that the city has lost about 12,000 affordable housing units in the last decade alone. So I'm not sure if 40% are brought back. I don't know. That's an interesting statistic. I'd like to. You're the first person to say that. So if that's
talk after the
yeah,
show.
sorry.
No, but that's good. No,
but if that's 40%, yeah.
So
if that's 40%, that's better than nothing. But a lot of people just are gentrified out. And what we really have to decide is an overall question: what kind of a community do we want to live in? Historically, Alexandria was a community that was vibrant and livable for all. Now things are changing. We are very close to the city, to DC. But if people move out to Woodbridge, that adds to congestion. And we, or wherever, not just Woodbridge, but Woodbridge is nice, but I'm just saying if they move out and then they travel up 395, that just adds to that incredible traffic. We have to be creative and committed to this issue. This is a national issue. And as John mentioned, dollars for housing, as far as the federal government, that's been cut. So we are going to have to be creative. And
unlike the Republicans on council, you will accept federal funds for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I thought so.
Never turned down.
Why would you? John, you've also been active on the schools. I want to get the title right here. You were the vice chair of the Youth Policy Commission for Public School Strategic Planning, a few other things, Public School Board Budget Advisory Committee, Public School Special Education Advisory Committee. I can't read all these. There's too many things you've done with the schools. You clearly have a vision for Alexandria Public Schools. What is that vision?
Well, I think the vision is to ensure that we have successful students that come out of our schools and are able to, be honest with you, maintain residence in the city. We have a very intelligent populace with a number of jobs that really, be honest with you, are high paying. Because you look at our median income in the city, folks are getting quality jobs. So I think it's necessary for us to prepare our students to be able to fit into that environment. That means they need to be high-level, high-achieving students. And so we need to push our school system in that effort.
And I assume teachers is how you do that. You get high quality,
exactly.
And you got to pay teachers enough to get the best teachers here, I presume.
Yeah, you do have to give, you not only have to give teachers the resources in the classroom, but you also have to ensure that they are willing to stay and continue their careers in Alexandria. Because one of the best things for teachers and for students, by that fact, is consistency. So if you have a teacher that comes to the city, wants to teach, is able to stay here and continue a career, you're able to sort of build on that.
What about the school infrastructure, Allison? Is there enough? Are we okay? Do we need to build new schools?
The superintendent has requested 3 or 4 new schools, I believe. The capacity issue is huge.
Is that because our population is growing or our school age population is growing? Well, why do we need?
Well, it's a great question because they knew that a bubble was coming, but they never know exactly. It's a bit of a guessing game for all school districts apparently, but maybe some families can't afford private schooling now. Maybe that's an issue. I'm not really, do you have a thought about this?
I mean, our population is really booming in terms of looking at young families. They're coming to Alexandria and settling down.
That's true.
And putting their
and if they stay, that's the future of Alexandria. That helps us economically, I presume.
It does. And so what we haven't really done I guess Tucker School was the last new school that was built, but we really haven't strategically placed our schools in an area that we can grow and be able to accept that change that's coming to to regional schools. I mean, everybody's seeing, you know, their populations grow because the metro region is a place that people want
It
to
is
come.
growing just as a
So
region.
let me ask you then about the budget. Will this bust the budget? How do you feel? I mean, we just heard from Tim and Dell that they think that they can basically keep the AAA rating and not raise taxes too much and deal with the budget concerns. Allison, do you have budget concerns?
Well, it is one of my top items of my platform that obviously my commitment to fiscal responsibility is right there at the top, and also maintaining the AAA bond rating is critical. It's actually a double AAA bond rating, which is excellent. But we do have debt, and we pay a certain amount of interest on the debt every year, and it's gone up over the last 10 years, and the trajectory is that it will go up even more over the next 10 years. So 10 years ago it was about 17 million interest on the debt. Now it's in the 30-40 range, and it'll be about 97 million interest on the debt. So that's just the interest on the debt, and that's the trajectory that's projected by the city as public knowledge. So with schools coming in, Potomac Yard Metro being built, and that's a capital improvement, these are all capital improvements that we need as a city, and including, we also have infrastructure issues that we're going to have to tackle. These are huge challenges. There's not a lot of wiggle room.
What wiggle room can you do? I mean, you're elected to the city council. How will you deal with these budget issues?
Well, I think these are the questions of our time. Where are we going to have to trim in order to make ends meet, like any family would have to do so. But we have to maintain that AAA bond rating, and maybe we'll have to do things over time and not all at once. Some debt is acceptable to those who score the AAA bond rating, but we have to have that AAA bond rating in order to have the lowest charged, for the municipal bonds.
John, do you have a comment on the budget?
Yeah, I was going to say, just sort of to tack on to what Allison was saying, and to be honest with you, we said this about housing, it's the same thing goes for education in terms of capital improvements. Being creative, using those public-private partnerships, they're out there. There are folks in companies and groups and associations that would partner with the city to build a school. And we need to be able to look at those, because I think in the next 3 to 5 years, it's about how we stretch our dollars. How do we think creatively? Dell talked about opening the satellite campuses. How can we look at other areas in the city, other spaces in the city, and use those for classrooms? So we're not having to necessarily build a new building every time. I think these things like that need to be talked about sort of more in public, so that the community knows.
Okay, we're going to just real quick.
Okay, I was just going to say, one thing that John and I both have in common is that we've both taught.
Both taught in schools.
Well, John currently works at the school district in Fairfax County, and I taught at American University. I mentored kids in Anacostia at the height of the crack wars, and I tutored 2 kids in 4th grade at MacArthur Elementary School.
That's a lot of work. When we come back, I want to talk about green space, open space. There's been a big talk about the environment in Alexandria. I want to get your views on that. Folks, if you want to call in, this is your last chance to do so.
Wow,
888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo.
I would like to speak English better.
Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. This is Mark Levine. We are talking now with two potential candidates for the City Council of Alexandria. This will be played many times throughout in Alexandria. People get a chance to look at you both and then see what they think. They are both on the ballot. It's John Taylor Chapman and Allison Silberberg. They'll both be on the ballot, Democratic candidates, on November 6th, the same day that you vote for President Obama and Tim Kaine. You can cast a ballot for John Taylor Chapman and Allison Silberberg. We were talking before the break a little bit about, I was just starting to talk to conversation about green spaces, about the environment. Of course, green space could be the waterfront. I know you've written about the waterfront. It can also be parks and so forth. What do you see, I guess I'll start with you, Allison. What do you see as the role of the City Council in protecting green spaces or public areas, whether it's parks or waterfront in Alexandria?
Well, I think it's a big part of the City Council's role is to create amenities, quality of life for its residents. Obviously, we do all kinds of issues from transportation and street lights or whatever, and trash pickup. But it's and schools and many other things. But open space is a critical part of any community. I remember, just sort of off the cuff here, but Mrs. Jackie Kennedy Onassis was really instrumental in helping preserve Central Park as well as Grand Central Station.
And Lady Bird Johnson planted a lot of stuff around the Washington, D.C. area.
Huge for beautification, and I'm originally from Texas, although I've been in Alexandria 23 years, since '89. But I think that beautification and parks and open space are critical to our well-being. The city does a pretty good job about it, but I think we can do far better. Apparently, our tree canopy is, I've actually been concerned about it for quite a while. The City Council in the last couple of years.
Tree canopy, that's just the number of trees in the city? Is that what that means?
It's a term of that.
I'm trying to get out of the bureaucratic terms and into...
Tree canopy is, how much green space, how many trees do you have? I mean, we've had some storms that have taken down some of our trees.
Sure.
But in general, you just have to continue to plant trees and to take care of your trees. And we're a little bit behind where we should be. And I think it's a big concern. And the City Council actually could have voted to give $70,000 in the past fiscal year to keep at it. And they chose not to. So that would be something I would have supported. I think it's important. You have to invest in your beauty, and in these are long-term choices. This is not going to be for 1 year here and 1 year.
Yeah, you plant a tree, it takes a long time, obviously, to
Right.
grow.
And
But if you don't, then 20, 30 years from now, there are no trees.
Right, but it has all kinds of ramifications for our clean air, for our, our visual beauty, for our peace of mind, for all kinds of reasons. It's important to have a great tree canopy. I live in Park Fairfax, and the line is that when we live in Park Fairfax, we live among the trees or in the trees. And it's really true. It's so beautiful. And so you want that, and we have to invest in that. And I would engage the young people. When I say the young people, I consider myself young. But the kids of Alexandria, and in that process of maintaining our parks.
I think it'd be great to have some kids plant some trees, maybe after school. What a wonderful thing. They can watch it, particularly if they stay in Alexandria the way John has for 4 generations. They can say, my grandfather planted that tree, and watch it grow.
Absolutely.
John, what are your views? What is your vision for green space, the environment in Alexandria?
I think my sort of focus on green space and environment is going to be to the use of it in the recreation. My background is as well as with Fairfax County government and recreation. So making sure our citizens are getting a quality use out of the open space that we have, whether it's just being in the park reading a book or biking or walking or running, anything like that, doing the dozens of nature trails that we have in the city. I think the use of our green space really opens the eyes of Alexandrians to what we have so that they do value it. And so when we're talking about budget and needing money to continue our tree canopy, people understand what that means to not only themselves but to the city at large. I think that's sort of the key piece that needs to be put forth through members of city council, not just as policy, but just in their personal talks with citizens, talking to them about how they're recreating, what are they doing to use the green space that we have in the city? Have they gone to a park recently? Have they gone to a rec center? Have they done
and there are lots of good ones. I'll tell you, I get that wonderful Alexandria pamphlet, that the spring summer thing. I get it, and I was like, wow, there's classes and there's I got to check out your indoor swimming pool in the winter. I mean, I haven't used a lot as an Alexandria resident. I'm going to do it a lot more. I'm starting to use it. I'm starting to use these facilities a lot more, and one of the best ways is that pamphlet, because Alexandria provides a lot of things that, frankly, you can't find in Washington, D.C. so much, but you can find it in Alexandria. John, I want to ask you, the waterfront was a particularly controversial thing the last couple of years. What is your vision for the waterfront? A lot of the stuff has been decided, but are you happy with that? Is there things that you would change? What do you see as the waterfront 10, 20 years from now?
To be honest with you, I sort of see the waterfront as the place I've known as a boy growing up. The waterfront has always been a quality commercial space where citizens can interact with business, but they can also go there to recreate and enjoy Alexandria.
I love the marina just outside the torpedo factory, and there's always such a wonderful mix of citizens there, and just all kinds. And so how will it change, or won't it change 10, 20 years from now? What do you think?
I think we'll see more small business. I mean, that's what I'd love to see out of our waterfront. Have the mom and pop stores or smaller businesses be able to take advantage of what Alexandria brings, because a lot of people come to Alexandria for its waterfront. I think we were recently named one of the most romantic cities because you can stroll along the waterfront and all things like that. So I think it adds to the value of what Alexandria is, because we have small shops. If I'm on a date, I can pop into a small ice cream shop and get a cone or a cup or whatever and continue with my date. I mean, while we don't think of it, if you're on a date, you're not thinking about the commercial usage that you just used.
Right.
But that's sort of what Alexandria has molded into. It's molded into an experience, and that waterfront is that experience.
And if we can get rid of the Morant plant and the Washington Post railway yard, we could have a continuous waterfront there, which would be really wonderful. Allison, I know you wrote an article for the Washington Post about the waterfront. What's your vision the next 10, 20 years?
Well, it was a guest column,
just
to be specific. That's right. It ran last December, and you can read it on my website, AllisonSilberberg.com. Well, I just, as a concerned citizen, I wasn't running for city council at the time. I just was concerned that there were these two sides that really didn't seem to be talking well with each other, and I was trying to talk to each side behind the scenes a little bit, and I just thought there was another way, a third way, if you will.
A middle way, a compromise.
Yeah, well, a middle way, which was that, first of all, I didn't think the plan, while it improved over time, was visionary enough. That's number one. Number two is, I think that our waterfront must be creative and remarkable and visionary, because we have a huge 400-year history, and the original plan called for 3 large hotels. And then it was cut back to 3 medium-sized hotels, which I still consider pretty large. And then they ended up voting in late January for 2 medium-sized hotels.
What can you do on city council? Or is this something you'd like to see changed?
Well, I would like some of it to be considered, again, reconsidered, but what I was proposing, I wasn't just against something, I was for something. What I was for was a small permanent band shell to be placed in Orinoco Bay Park, which is at the north end of the waterfront. And in the column, as a point of compromise and to build consensus, I suggested that perhaps we would also consider a small boutique hotel at the south end. But that was going to be 100 rooms or less, because a boutique hotel is really around 100 rooms. And that was somewhat redefined in the plan as 150 rooms. That's a very large difference. And I don't believe that our streets in Old Town, especially around Union Street and King Street, can take 2 medium or large, or whatever you want to call it, hotels. And I don't think it's very creative. I think that we have to be careful. I do think that the waterfront plan, to its credit, called for flood mitigation, called for a singular walking path along the water, beautiful ideas. But I also think we need some small cafes, like the little unique cafes that are only in Alexandria, like we have in Del Rey, kinds of small cafes that can, you can go there and have a cappuccino and a croissant or a taco and a beer. But right now there's nowhere to go there except the Chart House, which to its credit is there, but there's nothing else right there. So we have to figure this out. But if you get it wrong, it's game over. And Patsy Tyser, our former mayor, so beloved, and our former state senator, she said that the plan, we needed to pause and get it right, and that it wasn't ready for prime time. And I agree with Patsy, and I'm very honored that she has called me a voice of reason.
John, and if you had a further comment on the waterfront based on what Allison said, if not, I'll go on to another topic.
Well, I think, Allison definitely covered a lot, and I think a lot of that is sort of right in terms of what you can do with the waterfront. I mean, it really has a lot of options, a lot of potential.
And of course, that's the part that, as you say, that's the people come to Alexandria, and that's what they think of as the waterfront. Let me ask you a little bit. You heard my conversation with Tim Lovain about transportation. What's your view about a streetcar, John?
You know what? With what we have coming in our budget, we've got Potomac Yards, we've got schools, we've got stuff that we've talked about. I'm probably one of the different opinions on streetcars. I'm not there yet. I think it's a great idea. I was recently down in New Orleans, rode their streetcar just to really experience what a streetcar system is, and I enjoyed myself definitely. But I'd really like to see some other things sort of move to the top of the priority list before we get to a streetcar.
Okay. Fair enough. Allison, I don't know if you have an opinion on the streetcar.
Well, I think I would like, if we're going to do it, if the budget permits, then we should just try one little strip from the Arlington line into Alexandria to the closest metro stop and just see how that goes. But I think that it is more expensive, there's no doubt. More people do seem to ride it than others. I have ridden it in New Orleans and San Francisco, but I don't know, it's a quandary, but I think that we could try. I'm open to trying it, but I think transit is a massive issue, and you have to have all forms of transportation. People want to get out of their cars, they want to live, and they need to live right near mass transit.
Clearly, I could ask the two of you topics, and also Del Pepper and Tim Lovain, and you could go on for hours and hours. I think the one thing that's very clear is whether you agree or differ, all four of you are very thoughtful people, and I'd like to endorse all of you to come, and also Paul Stedberg and Justin Wilson as well. And please go out and vote. Don't forget, November 6th. It's not just the president and the Senate race, vote the city council race as well. This is Mark Levine signing off.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.